We're all called to different kinds of work. Maybe yours is creating spreadsheets or writing different kinds of reports. Maybe you teach college students or kindergartners. Or maybe, like Ruth, your work is gleaning grain. No matter what kind of job you have, your work can be an act of worship. This is the Women of the Bible podcast, and I'm your host, Erin Davis. Right now, right this very moment, I'm talking to you in part because it's my job, but more importantly because it's one way I can use my life to bring glory to God. What you can't see are the camera operators and audio techs who are worshiping too through their work. We've been walking through the study Ruth, experiencing a life restored. In this episode, we'll see that Ruth worked hard and her faithfulness, even in the mundane tasks like harvesting grain, caused others to take notice. Maybe you're listening to this episode as you wash the dishes or fold the laundry or finish that report. As you do, let Ruth's story remind you that it's more than work, it's worship. I came to Jesus kicking and screaming. I'm fond of saying kicking and screaming obedience is still obedience.
How does my work ethic show that I value work?
As I was walking through some of these darkest moments, the valley may be long and it may be very dark, but God promises to be with you in the midst of it.
Everything I get in this world, in this earth, is a treasure and a gift.
Do not turn off the podcast at this moment.
I often have to think, God is not oblivious to the situation that I'm in.
I'm loving walking through the book of Ruth with you. I hope that you are loving walking through the book of Ruth with us. I hope you need no introduction, but just in case somebody's just joining us, tell us your name and anything else you want us to know.
Hey guys, it is Portia Collins here, and I don't know what else to share.
You got a favorite color?
Purple.
Purple, color of royalty. All right, and your name and whatever you want us to know. Default to favorite color if you can't think of anything.
There you go. Kristen Clark from the great state of Texas.
Yeah, you got to get that great state in there.
I've got a cute little Maltipoo named Sadie.
Oh,
I love her.
Good to know.
Yeah.
See, it made us make the noise.
Yeah.
People are listening and going, oh, Sadie. And I'm Erin Davis. And in this session, we're going to consider our work as an act of worship. So let's catch people up. This is session 4, and we are just finishing chapter 1. We finished one chapter of Ruth. We're going to have to speed it up a little bit to get through it. But recap, we've mostly been talking about this woman named Naomi. What has happened in Naomi's life so far in this first chapter? Portia, what comes to mind?
Naomi has left her native land and has gone to Moab, where much trouble and just death. She experienced the death of her husband and her sons. And so then from there, she decides, okay, time to go back home.
Gotta go home.
Got to turn around. And she goes, returns to Bethlehem, and Ruth decides, okay, I'm going to stay with you. Orpah does not.
Right.
And now we get to kind of learn a little bit more about Ruth.
Yeah, here we have made it all the way to session 4, and we've barely talked about Ruth.
Right.
I feel like this book of the Bible could have been named many things.
Yes.
It could have been named Naomi. It could have been named Kinsman Redeemer. Nobody asks my opinion on the naming of books of the Bible. But certainly Ruth is important, and we've barely talked about her. Right. So let's catch up a little bit on Ruth. Kristen, would you read us Ruth 1, 8 through 18?
But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more.
So we've already looked at this part of the story, but it reminds me of that strategy sometimes in movies and TV shows where you see the story from one person's point of view. Yes. And then they tell that exact sequence of events again from a different point of view. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we're doing here. We've thought about this from the perspective of Naomi. Let's now think about it from the perspective of Ruth. So Ruth, a Moabite, with her mother-in-law, she's buried her father-in-law, she's buried her husband, and now her mother-in-law is trying to send her away. Her sister-in-law makes that decision to go. Ruth decides to go with Naomi into a foreign land, which we can assume she's never been to before, because for Naomi, Moab was the foreign land, but for Ruth, Judah is the foreign land. So as you look at these verses again, do that kind of change of frame. As you look at these verses again and consider Ruth, what do you see about her character? I love how you, Portia, tell us to use our imaginations. But read between the lines. What do you see about the character of Ruth here in these verses?
She had such an interest in the God of Israel, which really to me is mind-blowing. Because here she is, this Moabite woman. She's grown up in a land where all of these false gods are the ones that are worshipped. And somehow she just has this heart for the Lord. And she wants to go back with Naomi to go worship this one true God. And to me, that's just mind-blowing. It's this foreign land, like you said. She knows really nothing about these people. But she wants to go back. And she's willing to leave everything behind in order to do it.
We know that she'd heard stories about God, because the text tells us that Naomi had heard the stories that God had visited his people. For me, that's so compelling, the power of the stories of God on the people who do not know him yet. And so, we see this real interest in the Lord from her. Portia, what conclusions do you draw about Ruth's character?
You know what really stands out to me is what she says in verse 17, "May the Lord do so to me and more also if anything but death parts me from you." That the Lord, not everybody is saying the Lord. She didn't say, "May your God do," or
the God of Israel.
Right. She said, "May the Lord," which for me indicates Lord over her life. And so that submissiveness there, even though she doesn't know everything about, this God, the one true God, there is still an initial just submissiveness and a trust in the one true God.
I'm glad you pulled that out of the text. It doesn't follow our, she didn't walk through the Romans road or pray sometimes the things we think you need to pray. But isn't it in a way a declaration of faith?
Yes.
He's the Lord.
Yeah.
The Lord is going to do what the Lord is going to do. So we see faith in her. We also see loyalty to her mother-in-law. And man, I want to hire Ruth to write for me. This her language here. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. It's so poetic. So she's very articulate. She seems very calm to me as well. Also, we don't ever see hysterics from Ruth. And I don't want to villainize Naomi or Orpah at all. That would maybe make it easier to understand. It was like, well, these were the bad women and Ruth is the good woman. We really don't know enough about either of them to do that. But we know we love Ruth. And we're going to love her even more as we continue learning about her in Ruth chapter 2. Portia, can you pick it up for us? And we need to hear Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 through 7.
All right. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz.
I feel like happened to come should be in air quotes.
Yes.
I know, right?
She happened to come.
Like, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I interrupted you.
You are fine. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man, who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest.
So as we're trying to continue to get a picture of Ruth's character, as we head into this next part of the narrative, what else do we learn about her character? We know she has some faith. We know she's loyal.
Yeah.
We see her to be calm. And then they get to Israel, which, by the way, all anyone there wants to say about her is that she's from Moab, right?
Right.
Who is this? Well, she's the Moabitess from Moab.
Yes.
That's all anybody there wants to say about her. But what else do we learn about her character in these next set of verses? Kristen?
She's a hard worker. This girl gets to work. She's like, all right, we got to eat. We need some food. I'm going to go out and I'm going to find food for Naomi, for me. And she goes out and she works hard.
She does.
Wow.
Maybe it's the farm girl in me, but I just so admire the quality of hard work. I want to be the hardest working person in every room. And I have a saying that I say, some people are workhorses, some people are war horses, some people are show ponies. And I want to be a workhorse, you know, somebody that just works so hard. And so I super admire that in the character of Ruth. Listen, this harvesting business, that is hard work. And she just gets after it with kind of with a happy heart. She goes to work. I want to take us just a little bit further, and then we're going to unpack this. I'm going to read us Ruth 2, 8 through 16. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." If you're writing your Bible, I'd circle that wings. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward will be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." And at mealtime Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, "Let her glean, even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her." Listen, if you've read this story of Ruth and kind of thought like she was working in a garden, you should pay attention to these verses again, because it's like she might get attacked by young men. We got to make sure that we protect her, because if she's not here, she will get attacked in another field. I think that's important.
Right.
What does that reveal about her character, Portia, that she was willing to go to work without knowing Boaz's protection was going to be there for her? Does that show you anything?
Fearless. Like she is like, I'm gonna do this. And once again, I'm using this imagination, but I really would like to think that it's because she's trusting in the Lord. Like she is like, I'm not gonna worry about my life. I know that I have to go out here and try to get food for myself and my mother-in-law. So I'm just gonna do it and trust that everything is going to be all right.
Yeah, there's a fearlessness in her. I like her more and more the more we read.
Yeah.
Fearless, hard worker, faith-filled, a woman who speaks grace. She's not this like that. That's why I want to reframe Ruth. It's not like in the beginning she was just this destitute woman with nothing to offer, and at the end she had somehow transformed. And some of that's true, but right here in these early verses we see a woman of virtue, and her reputation had preceded her
Right.
all the way from Moab
The word was
to
getting out.
Judah. Yeah, what had Boaz heard about our girl Ruth? What does it say?
He had seen that she was a woman of great character, really, and going with her mother-in-law, leaving behind everything. I mean, that really impressed him. That was like, wow, okay.
Right.
This woman's serious.
She's willing to make sacrifices.
Yeah, willing to follow the Lord no matter the cost. And I think he really saw that in her character.
Yeah, and we see humility. There's never a point in this story we don't see humility in Ruth.
Right.
And isn't humility tricky? The second thing you think you've got humility, it slips right out of your hands. And you either the Lord builds it in you or he doesn't. You either have it or you don't. It's not something you can drum up in a tough situation.
Right.
It's so attractive in the character of Ruth, I think. And part of what Boaz must have been drawn to, I think, her willingness to sacrifice. And it takes humility to, I think, glean on the edge of somebody else's field who you
and
don't
to
know.
ask, to say, hey, will you, if I found favor and if you care, can I please just get some of your wheat, your
kind of
leftovers? Yeah, your leftovers,
Yeah,
right.
that takes humility.
Yeah, that takes
And you know, have you ever stepped into a room of women where you don't know a soul and felt that feeling?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what she did. You know, she didn't know anybody there. And so she kind of joins this female work crew who she doesn't know and is probably not immediately accepted because everybody's talking about how she's a Moabitess. And so, yeah, a ton of humility and just such obvious hard work. And she's generous towards Naomi. And to this point in the story, had Naomi been pleasant or unpleasant? How would you describe her? In fact, she had her name changed from Naomi, which means pleasant, tomorrow, which means bitter. So she's pleasant towards the woman who no longer wants to be called pleasant.
That is a message
That
right there.
is hard to do. So I think we see an attitude towards work and an attitude towards others that we can all emulate. I want to drill down on this concept of work. So how would you assess or describe our culture's view of work, Kristen?
Ooh, I don't know. I feel like there's twofold. It's like work like crazy, hustle, hustle, hustle.
Work is everything.
Work is everything. It's all of your success. It's your identity, your work. Just do it like crazy. And then there's kind of this other side that's like, work is a burden. I don't want to work, so I'm just gonna kind of be lazy and do my own thing, do what makes me happy.
Right, and I just kind of grind through work so that I can live my best life on the weekend. Yeah, I see both of those too, and both are kind of oppressive, frankly.
Right.
I mean, that hustle culture can make me feel all kinds of pressure I don't think the Lord intends for me, as can work being the part of my life I don't want to do.
Like the necessary evil.
The necessary evil. Your thoughts on how our culture views work, Portia?
You know, I always go back to Genesis and how I think we miss fact that we were given work before the fall.
Sister, are you looking at my notes? Because that's about exactly what we're going to talk about, but it's so important.
Yes.
Take us there.
And so, like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, we were created to work, to do work. But the thing is, our work should not consume us, and our work should not, like, that's not where the glory goes. The glory goes to God. And so anytime when we're working and I feel like we make an idol of that work, we're in dangerous territory. And then on the flip side of that, when we are just totally against working and just want to sit back and kick our feet up, once again, we're in some dangerous territory. I think that there's a healthy balance that God intentionally put in place. He created us to work, but also, he worked 6 days and rested on the seventh. So he models everything that we're supposed to be doing. And I think we just need to go back to the beginning and take some notes.
Well, I think part of the reason the three of us are such close friends is because we're all a little type A, right? Is that a fair assessment?
A little bit.
So I like to say I'm not type A, I'm type AA. Like, get the job done all the time. Yes. I have a sign in my office that says people over projects because I have to remember not to just think that my to-do list is my be-all, end-all. So I think I gravitate most into work is my identity. But I can see the other camp gravitating towards work as a waste of my time. And I think Ruth is going to give us maybe some healthy perspectives on work. I want to read us a comment that came in through Grounded, which is a video cast we do on Revive Our Hearts. And I love this comment. This takes us all the way back to COVID-19. She's referencing that. But she says, "Thank you, COVID-19, for reminding me that work is a privilege." She had that in all caps, which means we mean business. Work is a privilege. She said, "I don't have to work, but I get to work and help provide for my family. May I never take work for granted." And I've thought about this comment many, many times, the privilege of work. And I think Ruth must have felt that, because if she didn't get to work in Boaz's field that day, what was going to happen for her and Naomi?
They were going to go hungry.
They were going to go hungry. So you do hear that in her response, like, I'm so grateful I can glean in this field. I'm so grateful for my job. I'm so grateful that I can serve the Lord through working. I don't know that I always have that heart attitude towards
You don't see her complaining either. Like, could I get a better field? Maybe one in the shade.
Sure.
Maybe some AC.
Why isn't Naomi out here working? Why am I the only one working to feed it?
Right.
None of that in her. None of that.
Embraces the work the Lord has given her.
She does.
She works to the glory of the Lord.
Yeah. So, Portia, I'm so glad you mentioned Genesis. We see God doing the work of creation in Genesis 1. But, Kristen, could you read us Genesis 2:15?
Yeah. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it.
This is before the fall, which we know happens in Genesis 3. I can't take credit for this. This comes from my pastor who said this in a sermon recently. But he reminded us that work, just work, is not a fruit of the curse. Sometimes it can feel like, oh, I wouldn't have to work if the world wasn't so broken. But actually, what is a part of the curse is fruitless work. The Lord's talking to Adam and Eve and the serpent. He's handing down those curses. He tells Adam, you're going to work the land, and it's not going to produce the fruit that you want. And so work is good. Work is part of God's plan. And let's be honest, most of our work is gleaning, right?
Yes.
Most of it feels pretty redundant.
Right.
Pretty tedious.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to there not being laundry in heaven, because I do so much laundry.
Or dishes.
I don't mind the dishes. I do mind the laundry, so we could work together on that. But in the bottom of all my laundry baskets at home is this verse: "He who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much." I've written it there with Sharpie. Because if I cannot be trusted to fold the laundry with joy, I cannot be trusted to do anything else with joy. But a lot of it just feels menial, right? I once heard another pastor say, the Lord must care about the mundane, because there sure is a lot of it.
So he cares about our hearts in the mundane.
That's right. And so as you think about your work, I think there's this mindset right now. Tell me if you're hearing this, that like your work should be totally fulfilling every minute.
Yes.
Or you're missing it. And that God most wants for your life is for you to live your dream, and that's supposed to feel good all the time. And that's not what we see in Ruth.
Right.
And it's
Not at
not what
all.
we see elsewhere in Scripture. So let's head to a couple of passages that I think illuminate that. Who's got Colossians 3:23 through 24?
I have it. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for man, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ.
We don't have to get out like our commentaries and compare the original languages, talk to a bunch of old theologians to understand what's happening in this verse. It starts out with whatever you do.
Yes.
Work for the Lord because the Lord is your boss. I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and I was frustrated about some things happening at work, and that friend just cut right to the chase, and she said, "Oh, I thought you worked for Jesus." And I was like, okay, yeah, where do you go from there? She was reminding me that the Lord is my boss. And if the Lord is my boss, then I should work differently
Yes.
than if he isn't. Portia, can you read us Ecclesiastes 9:10?
Yes. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going.
Whatever your hand finds to do. Both of these verses, they start with like that, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. All of it.
Oh, can't it be except
for this. Except for this. Yeah, everything is worship. All work becomes holy work.
And you know, it makes me think about this. She and I just had this conversation, the differentiation between paid and unpaid work. And I think our culture wants to put more value on that work that you get paid for, but doing the laundry, doing the dishes, whatever it is, being a mom, that's work too. And it's valuable in God's eyes.
Yeah.
So.
And isn't it in those, for me, I don't want to say this is true for everybody, but for me, isn't it in those unpaid areas of work where we find the most resentment?
Yes.
And frustration?
Yes.
And where we maybe are most prone to forget, the Lord is my boss. I'm doing this for the Lord. You know, if I think I'm doing the housework for my family, then I'm frustrated with them.
Right.
I live with all boys. My house was last clean in 2008 and has not been clean since then. And I can be frustrated by that, except for, am I working for the Lord? Not that I think the Lord cares intensely about how clean my bathrooms are, but I think he cares intensely about how clean my heart is.
Yes.
And if I'm willing to do it for his glory. So I think that differentiation, I think that's not an easy word to say, Portia. I think that differentiation does exist in our hearts and can be really dangerous ground.
And I wonder if God gave us the mundane to expose our heart motives.
Yes.
Right? Because if all work we were getting praised for and getting these accolades and getting paid, you know, it might not show where our real motives are and who we're really working for, whose glory we're really after.
Right. But actually, it was Ruth's willingness to do the hard work that got her noticed. And so as this whole book of Ruth is a picture of bigger things, the Lord does pay attention when we work in humility. The Lord does notice when we're willing to do the hard without the complaining, which is so hard. That's another all things, whatever. Do all things without grumbling and complaining. Like, you mean all things, Lord? It's all things. 2 Corinthians tells us that God loves a cheerful giver.
Yes.
Not that person who serves while grumbling, not that person who serves angry, but that person who serves cheerfully. So here's a little heart check.
Yeah.
Are we Ruths in the area of our work? Are we willing, however you define work, are we willing to work with humility, cheerfully? Now, there might be somebody listening who thinks, not my job. I cannot do my job cheerfully. I cannot do my job with humility. Maybe you picture us all working in idyllic work settings where all we do is sip gourmet coffee and talk about Jesus all day.
That'd be nice.
Wouldn't that be great? But there are challenges in my area of work. There are challenges in your area of work. And Portia, I'd like to hear from you because your work life has been primarily in the secular marketplace. And so I think of that woman who might be serving under a boss who's a bit of a tyrant or a lot of a tyrant. or serving beside that coworker who the things she talks about, the things she's got posted, the things she's looking at. And this woman is listening and thinking, I don't know how to serve with joy in that place. What would you say to her?
First, that God is not oblivious to where he has allowed you to work. And as Christians, I think
Like it's not an accident.
Right. It's not It's not an accident.
Yeah.
He knows. And I don't know where this line of thought came from that as Christians, we're just supposed to be in our own little Christian bubbles and there is no ministry outside of that. But that is not the truth. And I believe that God does strategically place believers in hard workplaces so that the light of Christ can be seen.
We need believers in every single industry.
Yes. And so that's what I look to in my profession is, Lord, how do I, as a representative of you, how do I go into my job, or how do I engage with the various people that I engage with and show the light of Christ? How does my work ethic show that I value work, that I believe that work is something good that was created by God? And so everything that I do in my work, I'm thinking about how can that reflect the glory of God to somebody who may be a believer, somebody who's nominally, Christian, or somebody who just doesn't know Jesus at all. I want them to look at me and not see Portia in how she works, but to say, man, that has to be something deeper there. That must be, what is this Jesus that she's talking about,
We see that in Boaz and Ruth. I mean, the reality is that Boaz was a man of faith, but it's still her work ethic that he noticed.
Yes.
It's still her integrity that he paid attention to. And that probably would have been true whether he was a man of faith or he was not a man of faith.
Right.
I think this idea of calling has gotten pretty warped and wasn't true for generations. You served the Lord with gladness where you were working in the field, where you were taking care of babies. I mean, I think our Christian sisters throughout history didn't have quite so much angst about it because they didn't have the opportunity to quit their homestead and go pursue a more Christian opportunity for work. And so we can get kind of bound up in all of that. And Scripture's just saying, whatever you do, wherever you are, work hard for the Lord. And that's a heart check for me in this story. Well, I can't wrap up this session without talking about Boaz. Ooh, swoon, Boaz. We already read about them, but so as we've thought about what we could take away from Ruth's character, what can we glean? See what I did there? What can we glean about Boaz's character from these verses here in chapter 2? What kind of man does he seem like to you?
Oh, he seems like a man of compassion and grace and kindness. The way that he cares for this woman that he doesn't know, he's heard about her, but he extends so much kindness and compassion towards her.
He does, yep.
I look at that adjective, that's another one of my big things. I love looking at the adjectives in the text. And Boaz is described as a worthy man. So what does that mean? You're like a noble man. So he's got some oomph, he there's something about him. He's just not any old type of guy, but he is an upstanding guy. So I think that he you see just even from what he does with and how he engages Ruth, he has character, good character, and a very respecting man.
Oh, I hope my sons grow up to be worthy men. What a great way to describe him. I met a woman once and she introduced me to her husband and she said, "This is my husband, John." I don't know if that was actually his name, but she said, "This is my husband, John. He carries the banner." That's how she introduced him.
Wow.
And I just love that. She was saying he's a worthy man.
Wow.
He carries the banner of faith, of family.
Yes.
And he just acted like he'd been introduced that way a million times.
That's so cute.
And I think we could say this is Boaz. He carries the banner. I also see he has a culture of honoring the Lord in his business. He's trained his workers. What was that little thing they said back and forth to each other?
The Lord be with you. And they responded, "The Lord bless you."
Yeah, I don't think that happened spontaneously. That had been
doing that.
trained into them. So he comes to his workers and they start their interaction with this little cadence, which I love. Actually, it was intentional that I added Boaz on as an afterthought because I don't want us to fixate on Boaz. We can do that with this book of the Bible because Boaz points forward to a better Boaz in Jesus. And the qualities we see in Boaz, that compassion, that generosity, being worthy, interacting with people as if they matter, those all point to our kinsman redeemer. He has these qualities of a kinsman redeemer, but Boaz is not the point. He's not the hero. He points forward to Jesus. And in the study, we give the qualifications of a kinsman redeemer. They have the right to be a kinsman redeemer, they have the power to be a kinsman redeemer, and they have a willingness to be a kinsman redeemer. And all three of those point forward to Jesus, our kinsman redeemer. So as we move toward the end of this book of Ruth, we'll see it was all about Jesus all along.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Women of the Bible podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be the first to watch new content from Revive Our Hearts, like more podcasts, teaching videos, and testimonies. Come back next week for another episode of Ruth, Experiencing a Life Restored.